The morning sun was shining through the giant glass windows of Madison Elite Motors, the most well-known luxury car showroom in New York. Everything inside seemed to sparkle a little more than usual, and the whole place buzzed with the quiet confidence of people who were used to expensive suits, polished shoes, and deals measured in 6 or even 7 figures. While most visitors moved about as if they belonged there, Camilla, a black woman in her 40s, walked in gently, not making any fuss. She wore simple clothes, but there was no mistaking the quiet pride and hope in her eyes, the kind of look a mom has when she's about to do something special for her child. As Camilla tried to blend in, her calm couldn't keep the mood from shifting. She noticed a few staff glancing at her, eyebrows raised. Some customers eyed her with faint, guarded smiles, but Camilla could sense the questions behind their faces. Did she get lost? Is she looking for someone? Instead of feeling welcomed, a heaviness settled in the air. Everything around her, from the subtle fragrance of new leather to the careful arrangement of European sports cars, felt like it was designed to keep her out. What should have been a day of happiness and celebration was quickly becoming something else, a quiet, uncomfortable test of her patience and dignity. As Camilla moved between the gleaming cars, the sense of being scrutinized only grew stronger. She could feel the subtle glances. Some staff seemed to look right through her, while a few customers leaned toward each other, whispering just quietly enough to pretend they weren't being rude. The showroom, with all its glass, chrome, and soft jazz in the background, wasn't just shining. It was closing in around her, making every step feel heavier. It was almost as if the polished floors were daring her to turn around and leave. But Camilla wasn't about to back down. She kept her head held high, her hands steady, even though her heart was pounding. This trip wasn't just about looking at cars. She was here for her daughter, Maya, who had just graduated from Columbia University. Camilla had worked long hours for many years, saving bit by bit, dreaming of this day. She imagined Maya's face lighting up when she saw the keys. In her hand, this gift was about pride, love, and everything they had conquered together. No matter how cold or unwelcoming the place felt, Camilla was determined that no silent judgment or hidden prejudice was going to steal this hard-earned celebration from her family. The uncomfortable atmosphere reached its peak when Mr. Warren, the floor manager, made his way over to Camilla. His posture was stiff, and though he wore a tight smile, it did nothing to hide how he really felt. Without lowering his voice much, he spoke to her in a way that seemed polite on the surface, but his tone was sharp and dismissive. He didn't waste time with small talk. Right there, in front of the staff and a few amused customers, he dropped a few comments about how their dealership had a certain standard, and that Camilla might find somewhere else more suited to her needs. The meaning was crystal clear. Camilla could hear quiet snickers from the corner and see a couple of younger salespeople smirking. She knew exactly what was happening. She was being put on display, her embarrassment fueling their comfort. The humiliation settled on her shoulders, drawing unwanted attention from everyone nearby, as if they were all waiting to see what she would do. Instead of shrinking away or letting them see how hurt she was, Camilla chose something else. She straightened. Her back kept her chin up and looked Mr. Warren right in the eye. She said nothing, but the way she met his stare, without any sign of fear, carried more weight than any words could. Each cold, cutting word from Mr. Warren took more from Camilla than just pride. It carried years of old wounds, stories handed down from her parents and grandparents about doors slammed shut and unfair judgments made at a single glance. For Camilla, the sting was sharper because she knew every corner of this showroom. She had worked on its renovation as a contractor. Years before, bringing in teams to paint, polish, and wire the building until it became the gleaming spot it was today. To have those shining floors and spotless walls now serving as the backdrop for this kind of injustice was almost too much. Still, Camilla would not let herself be reduced to just another sad story. She steadied herself, looked out across the room, and made her voice heard. Calm but strong, she began to speak, reminding everyone, staff and customers alike, that respect and kindness belong to everyone, not just those who fit in. She explained without raising her voice that no one should be made to feel small for looking or speaking differently, and that what really mattered was the hard work, care and love that brought people through the door. The room went quiet. At first, the silence hummed with tension, but under the surface something had shifted. For the first time, people seemed to listen, and a few staff members exchanged uncertain glances, as if they'd just realized the moment might be bigger than they'd thought. As Mr. Warren threatened to call security, Camilla stood her ground and asked calmly if she could speak with someone above him, a supervisor, or even the owner. She explained that all she wanted was to be treated like any other customer who walked in off the street. Her request was met with another eye roll and a dismissive wave of his hand. Without missing a beat, he told one of the junior staff to get security, making it clear he wanted her out, and fast. A moment later, Frank, the longtime security guard, appeared. Frank had seen all kinds of situations in his 20 years at Madison Elite Motors, but even he could feel the tension in the room. Still, he followed orders, quietly walking over to Camilla and asking her to come with him. His tone was soft, almost apologetic, but rules were rules, and there was not much he could do. As they reached the door, Camilla felt the sting of embarrassment, pressed down on her shoulders, knowing every eye in the showroom was watching her leave. Yet underneath the shame, something began to change inside her. The anger she felt was real, but so was the determination. That moment, painful as it was, sparked within her a bold sense that this was not the end. In the middle of all the awkwardness, Jasmine, the young receptionist, stood behind her granite desk, watching the scene unfold with tears welling in her eyes. She had only been working at Madison Elite Motors for a few weeks, and the excitement she first felt had slowly given way to uncertainty. As a black woman herself, barely in her 20s, Jasmine saw pieces of her own story in Camilla. Her mother used to tell her about experiences like this, about feeling out of place or unwanted because of the color of her skin or the way she spoke. Jasmine thought things had changed, at least a little, but watching Camilla being singled out like this brought those old stories to life right in front of her. Inside, Jasmine was torn. On one hand, she needed this job badly. It paid her rent and her books for community college. On the other, seeing Camilla's steady courage and hearing her calmly challenge the injustice made Jasmine question if silence was really an option. She watched her co-workers keep their heads down, pretending not to see, while customers either ignored the scene or quietly approved. The quiet in the room only grew heavier, but in Jasmine's heart, something began to shift. Inspired by Camilla's strength, she felt the first hints of her own courage taking root. When Mr. Warren barked out the order once again for Camilla to be removed, Jasmine felt her body move before she could second-guess herself. Her heart was pounding so loud she thought everyone could hear it. Still, she stepped out from behind her desk and spoke up, her voice shaky but strong enough to be heard. Camilla hasn't done anything wrong. She deserves the same respect as every other. Uncustomer in here. There was no grand speech, nothing rehearsed, just a few honest words she knew to be true. The whole place seemed to freeze. People stopped mid-conversation. Some staff glared at Jasmine like she had broken some unspoken rule, while others looked uncomfortable, shifting in their spots. Mr. Warren's jaw tightened, and for a second it looked like he might yell at her, or, worse, fire her right on the spot. Jasmine could feel the stares, the fear creeping up her spine, but she stood there, refusing to look away. A strange quiet settled over the showroom as everyone took in what just happened. For once, The pattern of silence and exclusion had been broken, not by an outsider, but by someone on the inside. That little act of courage made even the most skeptical people pause, their certainty shaken for just a moment. Mr. Warren, clearly annoyed, wasted no time trying to shut Jasmine down. He told her, in a stern voice that was meant to be intimidating, to mind her own business and get back to work, hinting that she could lose her job if she caused any more trouble. The warning was loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, and it sent a chill through the air. Jasmine hesitated for a split second, nerves fluttering in her stomach. But she looked over at Camilla for just a moment and saw real gratitude in her eyes, a quiet thank you that did not need any words. That simple look gave Jasmine a sense of calm, even though her hands still shook. Jasmine slowly walked back to her desk, her cheeks hot and heart still racing. On the surface, she was just another employee following orders, but inside, she knew something had changed. She had crossed an invisible line, and there was no going back. The atmosphere in the showroom, which used to feel like a place where no one ever spoke up, now held a different energy. Maybe nothing earth-shattering had happened yet, but Jasmine could feel that a new kind of courage was starting to grow, a quiet resistance that might just change things, one person and one moment at a time. Pushed out of Madison Elite Motors, Camilla walked slowly down the front steps, ignoring the looks from people peering through the tall glass windows. Every part of her felt the bruise of what had just happened. The shame was heavy, but underneath, it burned a determination she had not felt in a long time. As she reached her old Toyota parked in the lot, Camilla sat in the driver's seat for a moment, gripping the wheel. She let herself breathe, slow and deep, trying to steady the nerves that still buzzed through her fingers. She knew she could not just walk away from this. There was too much at stake, not only for herself, but for everyone who might face the same kind of treatment. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her phone, but her resolve was strong. Camilla pulled up her contacts and sent out a quick, urgent text to her executive leadership team at the Chicago Community Empowerment Alliance. In the message, she called for an emergency board meeting, explaining just briefly what had happened and why it could not go unchallenged. What had begun as a simple trip to help out her daughter had now turned into a new mission, a drive for justice that Camilla was not willing to let go. Back inside the showroom, Mr. Warren and some of the other staff stood around, feeling pretty satisfied with themselves, almost like they had just solved some big problem. They laughed and swapped smug comments, having no idea who Camilla really was or the reach she actually had in the city. To them, she was just another customer they could dismiss without consequence. Their confidence was boosted by the belief that nothing bad could come of their actions, that people like Camilla did not have any power to push back. But outside in the parking lot, things looked very different. Camilla was not just thinking about herself. She was already mapping out her next move. She knew all too well that if she said nothing and just let this go, the same thing would keep happening to other people. It was never just about one person. Exclusion and bias grew each time someone stayed silent. So even though she was still shaken, Camilla set her jaw and started lining up calls and emails, ready to take on the issue head first. She was not planning just to blame a few people. She wanted to go after the whole system that allowed situations like this to happen in the first place, determined to bring lasting change. Right on schedule, a row of luxury cars rolled up and parked neatly in front of Madison Elite Motors, grabbing the attention of everyone inside and outside the building. People stopped whatever they were doing, eyes drawn to the unexpected arrival. Camilla stepped out of a sleek black Lincoln, dressed in a sharp navy suit, her confidence undeniable. Walking by her side were members of the board, a couple of well-known lawyers from downtown Chicago, and several senior directors of the Chicago Community Empowerment Alliance. The group moved together, purposeful and united, a clear sign that this was no ordinary visit. The effect was instant and electrifying. Employees behind the counter froze mid-task. Some of the sales reps exchanged uneasy glances. Even customers, who had been wandering the showroom, started whispering and looking over, aware that something significant was going down. The air of smugness that had clung to Mr. Warren and his closest allies just hours before faded fast. Instead of being the ones in control, they suddenly seemed small, unsure, and out of their depth. For once, the real power was obvious for all to see. This time, the force backing justice was unmistakable, and exclusion, which had always felt safe within those walls, finally had to face a reckoning. In the center of the bright showroom, Camilla faced the crowd that had gathered, her posture steady and her tone controlled. Without raising her voice, she announced exactly who she was, a leader at one of Chicago's largest non-profit organizations and a strong advocate for equal rights in the community. She spoke clearly about what had happened earlier that day, describing the way she had been singled out and treated unfairly, not just by one person, but by the atmosphere the dealership had let grow. Her words were direct and honest. She called out not just the wrong done to her, but the larger problem, a culture in Madison Elite Motors that made it easy to look the other way when others were mistreated. A hush fell as the reality of her story set in. People who had mocked her now stared at their shoes, unable to meet her eyes. Others who had just watched in silence looked guilty, as if they were only now realizing their part in it by not speaking up. Even customers who had come only to buy cars seemed uneasy. Where there had been arrogance and a sense of safety, you could now feel the whole room turn inward, each person thinking hard about their actions and what it meant for everyone there. Standing beside Camilla was the legal counsel for the alliance, a sharp and confident woman named Lisa Bryant. Without delay, Lisa turned to face the group and spoke firmly so that everyone could hear. She laid out the next steps. There would be a full-scale investigation into what had happened that morning, and every staff member directly involved in the incident would be suspended until the inquiry was finished. Her announcement sent a ripple of shock through the room. Mr. Warren, along with Ben Harris, the dealership's top salesperson who had laughed the loudest earlier, both tried to explain themselves, but their excuses sounded thin and desperate. No one seemed willing to listen to their side anymore. Camilla responded calmly, but without any room for debate. She reminded everyone that the true policies of the Chicago Community Empowerment Alliance were simple: dignity and respect for every single person, no matter what they looked like or where they came from. That was not just something on paper, she said. It was the real expectation, and everyone who worked with or for the organization needed to live up to it. After her words, the entire showroom fell into a thoughtful silence, the kind that felt heavy, yet somehow hopeful. For many, it was the sound of overdue change arriving at last. Right there in the middle of the showroom, with everyone watching, Lisa made it official. Mr. Warren and Ben Harris were both dismissed from their positions at Madison Elite Motors, effective immediately. The announcement landed with a thud. It was not about revenge or making an example just for show. The decision, Camilla explained, was about restoring trust and dignity, both in the dealership and out in the larger community. This was a move to back up all the talk about fairness and respect with real action. As Mr. Warren and Ben, heads down and shoulders slumped, walked past the rows of cars and out through the entrance, a wave of relief swept over the staff. For a moment, nobody said anything. Then you could feel the mood shift. Some workers traded glances that held hope rather than fear. People who had always felt they had to stay silent because of their job titles or because of how they looked started to believe that maybe things would be different now. Even the younger sales assistants, who normally blended in, stood a little, taller. For the first time, employees thought that their workplace could be a place where everyone's voice mattered, a change many had quietly wished for all along. Camilla stood in front of the staff and customers, her voice steady but warm. She did not sugarcoat anything. She told everyone that real change would not come just from letting a few people go. It had to be deeper. What needed to happen now was a transformation in the way everyone thought and acted, from the folks on the sales floor up to the board directors. She urged everyone to think about what respect really meant at work. Empathy was not just a buzzword, she said. It involved listening, learning, and noticing when someone else was left out. Camilla encouraged them to find the courage to speak up when things were wrong, not just for themselves, but for anyone who did not have a voice. She wanted the team to feel like they were all responsible for making Madison Elite Motors somewhere people could feel like they truly belonged. Lisa, the legal counsel, stepped forward next and built on what Camilla had said. She announced that the dealership would start a new set of mandatory training sessions focused on diversity, inclusion, and how to spot unconscious bias. Lisa also opened the floor to ideas, saying anyone could share thoughts about how to make things better. The place that once felt cold and exclusive was beginning to shift in a real way, moving toward a new atmosphere where everyone could finally feel at home. After sharing her plans for change, Camilla did something that caught everyone by surprise. She called Maria Smith, the receptionist who had quietly helped her earlier, up to the front of the showroom. Camilla spoke openly, praising Maria not just for what she had done that day, but for the honesty and decency she had shown from the very start. Camilla told the group that Maria's willingness to stand up against what was wrong, even when it meant going against louder voices, was exactly the kind of leadership Madison Elite Motors needed if it was going to start fresh. Maria stood there, a bit stunned and clearly moved. She had always done her job with care, but never expected to be singled out in this way, especially in front of everyone. Camilla then announced that Maria would now take on the role of general manager. To make sure she'd be ready, the company would provide all the training and support she needed as she stepped up. The staff broke into applause. Several people smiled and nodded, encouraged by what had just happened. It felt like a turning point. Maria's recognition made others believe that maybe, with some courage and teamwork, they could all help build something better together. In the weeks that followed, Madison Elite Motors really began to change in ways no one could have imagined before. Where the place once felt cold and only welcoming to a select few, it now gave off a whole new vibe. It became comfortable for everyone, no matter where they were from or what they looked like. Bright, friendly posters started going up on the walls, not just advertising sales, but sharing pictures and short stories about different customers, showing that each person who walked through those doors had a background worth celebrating. Maria settled into her new role as general manager with real energy. Every week, she brought the staff together for meetings that were different from anything they had experienced in the past. Instead of just running through numbers and goals, Maria made time for everyone to share what had gone well or what they struggled with. She encouraged people to really listen and learn from each other, whether someone was a seasoned salesperson or it was their very first week at work. Slowly, all those stiff and forced interactions faded away. Laughter became common, and honest conversations replaced any sense of judgment. Customers picked up on it too. Smiles and kind words became the new standard in the showroom. A few weeks later, Camilla and her daughter Sophia walked back into Madison Elite Motors, and the whole staff seemed genuinely happy to see them. There were no awkward glances or uncomfortable silences, just warm greetings and even a few cheers. The energy was lighter. It felt like everyone understood they were witnessing something important. Maria was there at the door, smiling wide as she welcomed them inside. This time, Camilla and Sophia were treated with the full respect any customer deserved. The staff had decorated a small table near the front with balloons and a handmade sign that read, "Every story matters here." When Maria handed Sophia the keys to the bright blue car she had been dreaming about, the whole group clapped and even a few people teared up. Cameras clicked, laughter filled the space, and Sophia's happiness was clear in her eyes as she hugged both her mom and Maria. For a few moments, it felt like the walls themselves had changed. Sophia turned to Maria and Camilla and thanked them, saying she could see now how standing up for what was right had made an impact bigger than anybody imagined. The dealership finally did not just look welcoming. It felt like a place where everybody belonged. Not long after the celebration at Madison Elite Motors, the changes that started there began to reach the other stores run by the Midwest Car. A group. It happened faster than anyone had expected. Word spread to the locations in cities like Chicago, Minneapolis, and Detroit. Managers called their teams together for meetings that sounded a lot like the ones Maria was leading every week. At Madison, new training programs were set up so that everyone from sales staff to technicians in the service bays learned about treating every customer and coworker with dignity and fairness. Promotions shifted too. Now, people moved up because of their hard work and willingness to help others, not just who they knew. Reports from the company's feedback trackers started to fill up with stories from families, students, and older folks who all felt comfortable buying a car, sometimes for the very first time. The story of how Camilla and Maria changed things caught the attention of journalists. Within a month, their journey made headlines nationwide. News segments showed how one act of courage, standing up for what was right, could spark change well beyond one building. Other businesses stopped to think about how they measured success. For Midwest Car Group, true luxury no longer meant fancy cars and marble floors, but the simple act of making everyone feel welcome and valued. At the Midwest Car Group's big, yearly recognition event, people from all over the country gathered in a huge hall in downtown Chicago. Employees wore name tags from cities big and small, Detroit, Milwaukee, even places out in Iowa and Nebraska. The atmosphere was full of energy, and for once, everyone felt like they had a place there. When Camilla, Maria, and Sophia were called up to the stage, the crowd grew quiet first, then erupted into applause as the three made their way forward together. They stood side by side, with the spotlight shining on them not just for what they had done, but for what they represented. Camilla stepped up to the microphone. Her words rang through the room. She explained that justice was not about punishing people for past mistakes. It was about fixing trust and making sure nobody was left out in the future. She told stories about how, when people are brave enough to act and humble enough to listen, doors can open for everyone. Maria and Sophia looked out into the crowd and saw proud faces, some with tears in their eyes. The three of them stood as living proof that even hard times could lead to good change. Madison Elite Motors, once a place people avoided, had become a national example of respect. Their story reminded everyone that with a little courage and kindness, any group or workplace could change for the better.